And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard. I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Saturday, August 30th, 2025. Starting with the state of the sea ice. The final melt-off continuing here in the very end of season. We are just 2-3 weeks tops away from minimum ice extent, and we find open water across the Chukchi Sea coastline with a few areas of lingering ice around and off of Prudhoe Bay, Kaktovik. But again, minimum ice is coming up here, usually just before the equinox there, before the third week in September. Looking at the satellite imagery, we have a ridge of high pressure, Gulf, North Pacific, bringing sunshine to areas of the Panhandle, northern, northeastern Gulf Coast, up into the mainland here, central eastern mainland, but low pressure out to the west, flinging another front, pushing it inland. This has some gusty winds along it, 30-35 knot winds, and some moderate to locally heavier rain up, especially up there as those south-south winds run up along the higher terrain of the Alaska Peninsula, and then here Bristol, Kuskokwim Bays, and more rain pushing into the southwest and western interior as we go through Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday. The ridge holds in place over the lower Gulf, North Pacific, which means a continuation of warm temperatures and sunshine in the Panhandle, southeast mainland. As we look to the west, though, that low is sitting out here, beginning to fill in the central bearing, but the front presses north and eastward. And so for the Panhandle on Sunday, marine forecast, south winds 10 knots, waves a foot or two, Lynn Canal. Northwest winds 10 to 15 knots, Petersburg to Ketchikan, Metlakatla, with waves not much more than a couple of feet. For the outer coast, a little stronger winds outside of Cross Sound off of Sitka and Craig at 25 knot. Northwesterly winds, swells 7-8 feet. And then on Monday, we have for the inner channels, north-northwest winds 10 to 15 knots, waves a foot or two, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, maybe a few feet there in Dixon Entrance. And then the outer coast, generally northwest winds around 20 knots outside of Cross Sound off of Sitka and Craig, waves 6-7 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, variable winds around 10 knots, Prince William Sound, as well as outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, east coast of the Kenai Peninsula with waves just a foot or two. Winds will be southeast to 20 knots, lower Cook Inlet with waves of 4 to 5 feet, but variable winds up there. Northern Cook Inlet, including Turnagain Arm and around Anchorage at 10 knots and waves just a foot. For Monday, still variable winds within Prince William Sound, outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, east side of the Kenai coast, with waves maybe a couple of feet within Prince William Sound, 3-4 feet off the Kenai. It's still southeast winds to 20 knots, lower Cook Inlet with waves there 4, maybe 5 feet. Northeast winds 15 knots off of Anchor Point, waves 2 to 3 feet. Northwest winds 10 knots there, upper Cook Inlet with waves a foot or two. Winds will be southerly on Sunday across Kodiak Island at 15 knots, waves 3-4 feet. As we trail down along the Alaska Peninsula, winds increase south to southeast to 30 knots, especially False Pass to Cold Bay. And waves could be as high as, say, 6 to 9 feet off of False Pass, and generally 4 to 6 feet along the Bering side. On Monday, south winds of 20 to 25 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island with waves 4 to 5 feet. Those south winds southeasterly within Bristol Bay to 25 knots with 3-4 foot waves, but as we trail out along the Alaska Peninsula, winds become variable north of Cold Bay and southwesterly 15 knots at False Pass, and waves generally running 4 to 6 feet. Across the Aleutian chain, we have low pressure up toward the central Bering, so stronger winds out toward the west, but we're looking at south winds, eastern Aleutians to 25 knots, becoming southwest and veering westerly west of Adak at 25 to 30 knots. And as that low continues to sit and spin over the central Bering, winds across most of the Aleutian chain will be out of the southwest, 15 to 20 knots eastern Aleutians, and around 20 knots through the central and western Aleutians. Most of the action is along the Alaska Peninsula and southwest west coast. So with the front that's going to be pushing eastward, we have bands of rain Moderate rain at times, enhanced by any terrain that'll run into along the coast. We're looking at southeast 30 to 35 knot winds, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay with waves 6 to 8 feet. Pribilof, south winds to 30 knots, waves upwards of 10 to 12 feet. And then along the lower Yukon coast, south-southeast winds 25 knots and waves 5 to 7 feet up into Norton Sound. For Monday, winds will just generally be southerly across much of the region near 25 knots. Waves around 5 feet, both Bristol and Kuskokwim Bays, 9 to 10 feet, Pribilovs to St. Matthew, and then along the lower Yukon coast north of Nunavik Island, up into the wider expanse of Norton Sound, we're looking at south winds 25 knots, waves 5 to 6 feet, with areas of rain. And then Sunday, across much of the Bering Strait, Chukchi Sea, winds are going to be southeasterly. So walking through this, southeast winds 25 knots, Nunavik or St. Lawrence Island, west side of the Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait, waves 7 to 9 feet. Strong winds off of the Lisburn Peninsula, Cape Lisburn, Point Hope, southeast winds 25 to 30 knots, waves 9 feet. And then coming back across from Wainwright to Kaktovik, winds are generally southeasterly at 15 to 20 knots with 3 to 4 foot waves. On Monday, across the entire region, we're generally looking at southerly winds at 20 knots, though there could be some 25 knot winds again in this wider expanse of Norton Sound along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, waves 5-6 feet there. And as we come up through the Chukchi Sea, south winds continue, lower Chukchi Sea around Cape Lisburn, up to Utqiagvik and eastward to Prudhoe Bay with waves generally running 4 to 5 feet on Monday.